What is going on, my friends, and welcome back to another video on the channel. Well, in today's video, we are going over Matic as it has now just completed the second major confirmation in which we needed to see for us to say that the bottom has been set around $1.30, and we very well may be chasing some new all-time highs extremely soon. So, of course, the very first confirmation in which we had been looking for was the clearing of the 20 simple moving average on the daily charts. Now, the moment in which we got rejected by it around January 17th, it established that 20 SMA as resistance. Now, what we know about these resistance levels, especially the 20 simple moving average, is it has a history of pushing us continuously to the downside. But once we're capable of breaking it, these upward swings and these macro trend reversals become very, very likely. And so the moment in which we did clear this, just about 2 or 3 days ago, back here, let's give it February 5th, and we held this level as support and continued to the upside. We got that full-blown confirmation that that 20 SMA has now been cleared, and we very possibly could start to see some type of growth similar to what we saw back towards the end of last year. Now, the second confirmation is one that we talked about over on my Twitter at TylerHillYT earlier. Of course, I do a bunch of technical analysis over on Twitter, so do go check it out. But we were talking about this macro trend break here. And as you can see, up until this point, sitting around $2.06, we have pretty dramatically cleared and significantly decisively cleared this trend line, which is a huge step for Matic. We would not have been able to even think about setting new all-time highs until we were able to break the downward level of rejection in which has been pushing us down for months at this point. And so the fact that we were able to clear it is now again confirmation number 2 of the 3 major, let's give it 4 major confirmations of which we need to say, okay, Matic is very likely going back up towards $3.50, maybe even $4. So now at this point, now that we see these 2 confirmations, let's talk about where this thing can go from here. What are the last 2 confirmations we need to see and how I am playing this thing out? So of course, let's start with the next 2 confirmations that we need to see. Well, confirmation number 1 is that we get back above this 50 moving average. You guys can see that as we are working our way up, these times in which we recapture that 50 moving average, we have tendencies to really see some upward growth to the top side, right? Even if you look back here, look at how well we were working our way up. We held it, and we used that 50 moving average to just continue back to the top side. Every single time that we have lost it and recovered it, it has led to some pretty significant gains, and I am expecting the same here, especially considering you can very clearly see that we are running into resistance at it right now. And so, of course, with that being said, that is going to be the next level of confirmation in which we need to see in order to say, well, this thing is very likely going to the top side. Now, around the same time that we see that break of the 50 moving average, I am actually expecting that we will see the 4th confirmation and the last confirmation, which is the clearing of the 0.786 off of this macro Fibonacci swing high down to swing low. What happens is that if you draw your Fibonacci from up here around this, let's go ahead and give it $2.42 area all the way down. Let's give it at $1.31. You will get this 0.618 to 0.786 Fibonacci zone between $2.14 and $1.92. And what we know is that in order for us to recapture this previous high and set a new macro local high, which is very important, we have to get back above $2.14 because that's the last major level of resistance. So until we are able to clear this level, there is no saying that we are for sure going to come back up and set this new high. We must get back above 214, which is the reason why it is confirmation number 4. Now do remember, whenever we do enter into these downtrends, the rules in the general definition of a downtrend is lower lows and lower highs. And the moment in which we're capable of coming back up here and setting the new higher high that breaks the general rules of a downtrend and makes it much more likely that we'll set the higher low, maybe even if we retrace, we set the higher low, and we continue into more of a macro uptrend. That is why it's so important that we get up here. And in order for us to get up here, we must clear this Fibonacci level. Because if the price is to reverse, it is the most likely that it will reverse off of this 786 level. And so once we finally get over that big barrier, the shot back up to the new macro high becomes much, again, more likely. So a reminder, the next 2 confirmations and the last 2 confirmations are this 50 moving average and also this $2.14 level. The clearing of those 2 makes it very likely that we are working our way back up, and I personally will begin to start to do my accumulating and plans for mass accumulation if we do get another pullback once we set that new macro high. Now, speaking of possible pullbacks, I do want to address the fact that we are seeing bearish divergence on the majority of our charts. Now, what this means is that we are starting to get extended and that it is likely that before, sooner than later, we will probably see a consolidation or a micro pullback in the short term, okay? Now, let me highlight some of these divergences and show what these extensions are. So as you can see, we set this high back here, we set a high on the RSI. Now we've currently set the higher high on the RSI, but are nowhere near just yet setting the higher high on the price. Now this means that although the bulls are having extreme success to the top side in terms of relative strength, it's not having that same effect on the price to push it back up to the similar levels in which we saw in the RSI to the RSI in comparison to price, if that makes sense. And so since that means that the strength of the bulls is relatively weak in comparison to what we saw before, it might just show that it took a lot of power, a lot of buying power and strength to get from this trend line, and we may need to pull back a bit before continuing to the top side, as our bulls are seemingly going to get exhausted sooner than later. And if we do go ahead and pull up our Bollinger Bands here, one thing you can see as well is that we are extended into the top side of our Bollinger Bands. Now do remember, we measure these Bollinger Bands by finding 2 standard deviations away from a moving average. And so what we know statistically is that a crypto can typically only maintain 2 standard deviations away from a moving average for a very short amount of time before eventually seeing a pullback within these Bollinger Band envelopes. And so what that means is that since historically we will get extended out here and consolidate or barely just pull back, I am expecting that something similar will happen rather sooner than later. Now, optimally speaking, before we see that pullback happen, it would be best case scenario that we are capable of clearing the 786 at $2.14. But even if we do pull back before then, as long as we are holding some support realistically above $1.70 to $1.80 back towards these regional levels of support and resistance, I'm really not all too concerned with if we consolidate or if we pull back, again, as long as we stay back above this previous level of resistance. Let's just call it $1.70. And so overall, today's little quick update is that we have seen confirmation number 2 happen. We have 2 more confirmations, which is the clearing of the 50 MA and the $2.14 level. And if we are going to see a pullback, it probably will be sooner than later due to overextensions on our RSI and on our Bollinger Bands. But as long as we are sitting well above $1.70 and above this previous level of resistance, being the downward sloping level of resistance, we are very likely, in my opinion, to see the retest back up to these levels and do see a continuation back to the upside over the mid, over the long term. So that's kind of the quick update from Matic today. Nothing too special, nothing too spectacular. We are getting extremely close to mass accumulation once we're finally capable of going through confirmation number 3 and confirmation number 4. And of course, if you do want to know exactly when these confirmations do happen, all you got to do is subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you're never late. Also, if you do go ahead and follow me on Twitter at TylerHillYT, I post all of this information there as well in order for you to get much faster access to that, as well as in my Patreon. So with all that being said, of course, I hope you guys did enjoy today's video. If you did, of course, you can always let me know simply by smashing that like button so more people can see it, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.